My name is Kayli Scholz. I'm the author of St. Grit. St. Grit comes out November 14th of this year. It's about a very bad woman that has a witch growing inside of her that she calls St. Grit. It takes place in rural Florida, and it is told over the span of 3 decades. Today I'm going to read a slightly abridged version of the first chapter, and I hope you like it. Thank you. We smoked grass with serene ritual on the hood of a Dodge, watching blissed out girls in halter tops, rattling tambourines by the bonfire. Sugar Bend's was a busted down mill town, but in July 1977, love bug season, the girls came alive. The boys, dressed in Wranglers and drunk on grit beer, milled around with affected swagger. That summer, everybody was pagan. Everybody at the bonfire had a spiritualist cousin that read tarot and studied astrology. Everybody was an expert on the mystic ladder. Roger, in his macho delusions, called these nights snapshots of occult matter. We'd been going steady since May. He passed me the joint and I took a long hit, reveling in the euphoric head rush. The warm smell rose through the air, lingering in a thick gray cloud. Nadine Boone, Roger said. He leaned into me, sucking my tongue into his mouth. I'm not waiting any longer to have you. So have me. I was rotten inside, but not because I made Roger wait to screw me. I was rotten because of the witch growing inside of me, getting stronger every day. While the bonfire girls pinged for love on summer nights, I'd ritualized masturbating in the woods behind my house, so that way, when Roger and I finally did have sex, it would be satisfying and orgasmic, like Donna's issues of Ms. Magazine said. Sex magic. I didn't believe in a lot of things. I believe I wanted to feel good all the time. I unlinked my arm from Donna, who'd been arguing with her boyfriend Ted all night. Our faces were flushed from the heat. Our hair smelled like Vidal Sassoon and cannabis. I passed Donna the joint, watching a black-bodied love bug carcass writhe on the knee of my sparkling tights. I didn't bother flicking the insects away because they'd return copulating mid-flight. Rural paganism, Roger said. What about it? I said. Half of these girls couldn't differentiate Aleister Crowley from Jim Jones in a lineup. They treat Ed Warren like a teen beat pinup. I clicked open a can of grit beer, unsurprised that Roger hadn't acknowledged Lorraine Warren. Roger was like that. Don't you know anything? Ghost hunters work with the church. Black magic is witchcraft, I said. Superstition isn't new. Roger glanced sharply at me, his eyes turning a shade darker. I know what I'm talking about. We watched the gurus. They came by all the time in their floor-length robes, offering peace and love. They tried to convince everybody that everybody was worth loving, even if they weren't. I knew everybody wasn't worth loving. My brother Hatch wasn't. He was the star quarterback, floating around the bonfire in a varsity jacket, carrying around a steel guitar he'd snatched from a drunk girl. He dissolved into laughter. Everybody wanted to touch Hatch. Everybody wanted to tell him something. Everybody wanted to be in Hatch's rite of passage, comprised of football, grabbing girls, and drinking. Hatch wasn't worth loving. The gurus didn't know that, no matter how many nights they came to the bonfires and smiled and waved. Somebody turned on a band called Fleetwood Mac, pumping the music from a shag-carpeted van on the corner of Lake Briggs under a row of sparse pine trees. Donna went chasing after Ted. They'd been fighting all night. My high would wear off soon. The grass was weak. I wanted to leave. I wanted to have sex with Roger, finally. Women are witches with or without black magic, Roger said. Did you see the way Donna treated Ted just now? I'd have slapped her if she talked to me that way. I'm glad you're not like that. He took the last hit of the grass, not offering me any more. Most girls never shut up. You couldn't see the stars out here in Sugar Bend's, not by the lake, not in most places. The air was dusty from residual smoke rising up through the air out of the sugarcane mill halfway across town. The stalks were burnings. We'd smell it until winter. Me and Roger hopped off the Dodge and went into the woods surrounding the lake. A lot of kids were swimming drunkenly, flying off a rope tied up to a hemlock. We walked among cottonwood leaves and stinky palmettos with red-stemmed brambles. The katydids rattled. The congregations of our peers quieted the further we hiked, crabgrass and red buckeye grazing our calves. I tore red buckeye off its stem, the dried thorn too. I was thinking how naive women in the olden times would boil this buckeye with cat feces for unloving boyfriends and husbands and bray at the moon in unhinged anger to get loved better. We arrived at an abandoned hunting shed. It was the kind used for the Boy Scouts in the 1960s. There were termite holes all over the log ceiling frame, initials carved into the wood. Somebody had heaved a mattress onto the floor. It was nearly pitch black except for a stream of floodlight coming from the lighthouse. This was it. I'd finally have sex. I felt the jungle heat loom inside of me, ravenous. The backs of my knees were sweaty. We removed our own clothing. Roger pulled me onto the filthy mattress, his hands roving across my tits and thighs. We didn't kiss. When his hand drifted between my legs, a look of disgust came across his face as he snatched his arm away. I was embarrassed by how wet I was. I apologized. "The girls I've been with don't get like that, Nadine," Roger said. He wiped his fingers off. "You better be clean, no VD or none of that." "Of course I'm clean. What do you think I am?" I was furious but wanted to hurry up, feeling flushed head to toe, nauseous from the trapped heat in the shed. I wanted to enjoy sex. I wanted to know what it felt like. I wanted to know what I'd conjured in the woods with my own lust that I was generous enough to give to Roger. He pushed into me without kissing me or looking at my body, and it was over in 2 minutes. After, we dressed as fast as we could. "Say something," I said. Roger shoved his feet into some weathered sneakers. "You didn't bleed. Thought you were different. The girls I'm with bleed the first time. The girls you're with screw half the football team. You're lucky I don't slap you." "Roger," I said. "Wait, I'm sorry." We stumbled out of the shed. My body was still wet and unsatisfied. I'd practiced for a lightning orgasm from Roger for weeks. Suddenly, I was annoyed with Donna too, who eagerly told me how great Ted was in bed. I chased Roger back to the bonfire. I put my arm around Roger so he would forgive me, but it wasn't until a half hour later, while gazing in the Dodge's side view mirror, trying to light a Salem, that I saw flecks of black eyeliner on the flesh around my eyes. I forgot about the cigarette gripping the mirror. My winged eyeliner had smudged too. This was Roger's fault. I felt my gut catch fire and rage. Donna drove me home. The windshield wipers did little to remove the caked-on love bugs off the window. She was high as a kite, a little drunk. I didn't mention Roger. The house was on Suwannee Road. There was a newly installed post in the grass by the mailbox that read, "Hatch Landing," named after my brother, of course. It was a 2-level house, big for Sugar Benz's standards, white wood frame like real country, a brick fireplace. We lived near Barrett Cemetery on a lonely road. The house was surrounded by Spanish-mossed, canopied southern oaks. The woods, a half-mile deep, didn't belong to our property line, fenced in by cheap metal fencing. It was where I did all my thinking, all of my private rituals, where I burned through anger. I was alone and angry, traipsing up the wooded path to my spot, the trees casting shapes like shadows of tiny hands. The brambles were thick in my path. The air smelled musky this time of night when our poisonous tree branches got a little lift from a gust. It was a manchineal tree, and Mom, in her patchwork kitchen apron, used to watch us from the porch to make sure we didn't get too close. Its shadow line was our cautionary mark, and we never passed it as children. The manchineal sap was milky white, and if touched, caused boils or burns. If ingested, intestinal damage. When it rained, and it rained all the time this side of Florida, the poisonous sap turned airborne. Mom worried about cancer. The manchineal was the furthest point from the house in our woods, and the yellow-green fruit that appeared seemingly overnight in winter was eaten by reptiles. We'd find them the next morning dead, belly up, the fruit half-eaten on the ground. I drew a triangle in the dirt that was hard to see beneath the crabgrass and weeds. The ritual triangle that Roger believed he taught me to do. But I'd awoken once from a heavy dream where a woman in rags with tree vine growing out of her head poured oozing brimstone into my mouth. Roger had nothing to do with my rituals. All Roger had done was almost make me cry. I uncurled the edge of the kimono, getting on my knees and then on my stomach in the triangle. I didn't need Roger to get off. I caressed myself until my clit pulsed for me to rub it. With my back to the sky and trees, the manchineel's branches shook in joyous disturbance. The ritual. I rubbed myself harder, and when I finally came, without Roger ruining my perfect eyeliner, I left the triangle. My face was hot. I tied the kimono. With bare hands, sticky from orgasm, I grabbed a bramble from the manchineel and pulled it off the bark. The sap dripped onto the same hand. It didn't burn. It felt like the softest silk, festering like acid into my skin. I re-entered the triangle, my clit still swollen in satisfaction, and instantly all three corners of my triangle caught flame. Grit beer! I remembered what I was going to call it, the dark secret growing inside of me. I conjured thee, Saint Grit, into me. The three dagger flames rose over my head and then evaporated just as fast. I left the triangle, my arms and legs tingled with wet heat. I returned to the house and gulped 4 glasses of water. I went to bed. A man almost made me cry today. Never again. When I closed my eyes and was almost asleep, I heard a horn lament softly in my ear. Thank you.